During what seemed like a routine royal visit, Prince William found himself face to face with a little girl whose innocent question would silence the entire room. Surrounded by cameras, smiles, and polite chatter, no one expected the moment to turn so deeply emotional. But when she looked up and asked her heartbreaking question, Prince William's expression shifted, and so did the hearts of everyone watching. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't scripted, it was raw, real, and unforgettable. What she asked left the future king and the world completely in tears. Here's what really happened. The warm welcome and William's speech. The scene begins on a crisp morning as Prince William's car pulls up to the entrance of the Grief Support Center. Outside, a small crowd of children and staff eagerly awaits him, their faces lit with anticipation. As the car door opens, the sound of camera shutters fills the air. But the focus quickly shifts to the smiling children clutching handmade cards and banners that say, "Welcome Prince William." William steps out, dressed smartly but approachable, flashing his familiar warm smile. The children cheer and wave, some too shy to look directly at him, while others bounce excitedly calling his name. The staff, wearing name badges and bright smiles, stand in a neat line to greet him. The head of the center steps forward to shake his hand, introducing herself before leading him toward the entrance. "We're so honored you're here today, Your Royal Highness," she says, her voice carrying both pride and gratitude.
I played rugby at school and loved it, and went from being, I was classic, like how school really started, thinking I was quite fast.
William thanks her warmly and takes a moment to shake hands with each staff member, often bending slightly to greet the children eye to eye. Inside the cozy, light-filled hall, the walls are adorned with children's artwork, rainbows, stars, and heartfelt tributes to lost loved ones. The atmosphere is both joyful and tender. Everyone gathers in a semicircle, the children at the front on soft cushions, with William standing at the center. He begins his speech by thanking the staff for their tireless work and the children for their bravery. His voice softens as he recalls his late mother.
"There is comfort in remembering, in acknowledging that, while taken horribly soon, they lived. They changed our lives."
Princess Diana, saying, "I know how it feels to lose someone you love so dearly. I carry that feeling with me every day, and it's why I admire each of you for being here and supporting one another." The children listen intently, some clutching their cards tightly, others nodding in quiet understanding. His words strike a chord, filling the room with an emotional energy, equal parts sadness, comfort, and hope. As he finishes, the children erupt into applause, their faces beaming, a few already wiping away tears. But what left Prince William even more moved than the children's applause? Stay with us to see what he discovered next. Staff, carers, and experts show William around. After the applause from his touching speech faded and the children settled, the center director invited Prince William to tour the facility. Flanked by staff and carers, he walked slowly down a brightly painted hallway, taking in the atmosphere, warm, colorful, and filled with the sound of children's laughter and soft music. On the walls hung framed drawings and paintings created by the children. Rainbows, smiling suns, hearts with names written inside, and portraits of their loved ones. William paused at one piece depicting a small boy holding hands with an angel. He leaned in closer, his face softening, and asked the carer beside him, "Who painted this?" The carer smiled and replied, "That was Jack. He painted it for his mom. He said she's watching him from heaven." William stood still for a moment, visibly moved, before continuing down the hall. The director guided him into the first room, a therapy space filled with beanbags, shelves of books, and sensory toys. A therapist explained, "This is where the children come for private or group sessions. We help them talk about their feelings through play and creative activities." William nodded thoughtfully, then knelt down next to a little girl arranging colored blocks. "What are you building?" he asked warmly. She glanced up shyly and whispered, "A castle, so my daddy can come home." William smiled gently. "That's a beautiful castle. I'm sure he'd love it. Next, they moved into a room lined with a memory wall, where photographs and notes were pinned under the words, "Always remembered." William walked along the wall, reading names and messages, occasionally reaching out to touch a photo lightly, as if in silent respect. As they entered the playroom, the mood lifted. Children giggled as they played with toys and puzzles. William immediately joined them, crouching down to help a boy assemble a racing car track. "I think you're beating me already," he joked, sparking laughter from the boy and nearby carers. The staff took turns explaining the struggles many of the children faced: losing one or both parents, experiencing trauma, battling serious illnesses, or being placed in foster care. One carer added, "They often feel invisible, even when surrounded by people. Here, they find their voice again." William listened attentively, his expression a mix of compassion and quiet determination. He asked thoughtful questions, like what kind of support the families received, and how the center managed to provide such tailored care for each child. At every stop, his empathy shone through. He bent down to every child's level, shook their little hands, ruffled their hair, and never once made them feel rushed. He offered words of encouragement, praised their artwork, and even shared a joke with two boys who were pretending to be superheroes, pretending to surrender when they pointed their imaginary swords at him. It wasn't just a royal visit. It was clear he wanted to understand their world, to share in their pain and their moments of joy. But what could shift the mood from laughter to silence in just moments? Keep watching to witness the question that left William visibly shaken. The heartbreaking question, and William's response. After the lively tour of the center and cheerful moments in the playroom, the staff gently ushered everyone into a quieter space. A cozy group room lined with soft cushions and chairs in a circle. The walls were decorated with more of the children's drawings, and a few stuffed animals sat in the corners, as if silently watching over the group. Prince William took his seat among the children, choosing one of the floor cushions rather than a chair, so he could be closer to them. Around him, boys and girls sat cross-legged, some leaning against carers or holding little comfort toys. The room buzzed lightly at first with whispers and shy giggles, but as the center director spoke, it soon quieted. "This is a special time," she explained. "It's a chance for you all to ask His Royal Highness anything you'd like, or just share how you're feeling today." William smiled warmly, scanning the circle. "I'm here to listen," he said. "You can ask me anything. No question is too big or too small." For a moment, no one moved. Then, a few tentative hands shot up, and the questions began. "Do you have a dog? What's it like to live in a castle? Do you like football?" William answered each one with humor and kindness, making the children laugh and putting them at ease. Then, from the corner of the circle, a small, trembling hand rose slowly. It belonged to a little girl with big brown eyes and a ribbon in her hair. Her voice was barely above a whisper when William called on her. "Yes, sweetheart?" She swallowed hard, her hands twisting in her lap, and asked, Do you miss your mummy, like I miss mine?" The room fell completely silent. William's face softened instantly and his eyes glistened. For a moment, he seemed to lose his words. Even the staff behind him shifted uncomfortably, some looking down, others already blinking back tears. William leaned forward, closing the space between them, and gently took the little girl's hand in his. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I miss my mummy every single day." The girl looked at him, her lip trembling. William continued, his thumb brushing over her small fingers. "There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about her. She's still with me, in everything I do. And you know what? Your mummy is with you too. Even if you can't see her, you're never alone." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she managed a small, brave nod. Around the circle, carers and children alike were silently crying, moved by the raw honesty and connection in that quiet exchange. It was no longer just a royal engagement, it was a moment of shared grief and healing. But what did William say that left the entire room in silent tears? Stay tuned to find out. The Room in Tears. For a long, breathless moment after Prince William's tender words, the room remained absolutely silent. His quiet reassurance to the little girl that she was not alone in her grief hung in the air, as though no one dared to disturb it. Even the ever-clicking cameras outside the doorway had stilled, their lenses lowered out of respect for what was clearly a deeply personal moment. The little girl blinked up at William, her small hand still wrapped in his. A single tear escaped down her cheek, and she quickly tried to wipe it away, but he gently shook his head. "It's okay to cry," he murmured to her with a faint, comforting smile. That single tear seemed to open the floodgates for everyone else in the room. Quiet sniffles began to ripple through the circle of children. Some hugged their stuffed animals closer, while others reached out for the comforting arms of the carers beside them. A little boy leaned into his older sister, hiding his face in her shoulder as his tiny shoulders shook. Even the adults, the seasoned staff who had guided countless children through loss, couldn't hold back. One carer, who had been standing in the corner with her hands clasped tightly in front of her, discreetly dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Another leaned down to whisper soothing words to a boy who was now crying openly. William pulled the little girl into an embrace, resting his chin lightly on her head as she quietly sobbed against him. He whispered a few private words to her then, words no one else could hear, and she nodded faintly, finally breaking into the smallest of smiles through her tears. Around the circle, children began to lean on one another for support. Some crawled closer to William, as though drawn to the quiet strength he exuded, while others held hands or simply sat together in shared silence. It became clear that his openness, his willingness to show his own pain, had given them permission to show theirs. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly from sorrow to something softer, more communal. It was no longer a space filled with individual grief. It became a space where pain was acknowledged, accepted, and even shared. William stayed crouched among the children for several minutes, moving from one to another, offering comforting words and a warm touch on the shoulder here, a gentle joke there to lighten the heaviness when he felt it was right. One little boy who had been crying earlier suddenly piped up with, "My daddy says Mummy's in the stars. Do you think so too?" William smiled, looking up at the ceiling, and then back at the boy. "I think she's in the stars. And she's also right here," he said, pointing gently to the boy's chest. That earned a few soft smiles and more nods around the circle. The tears hadn't stopped entirely, but now they came with faint, hopeful smiles. Grief, wrapped in a little bit of healing. A burst of joy. Games and activities. After the emotional exchange and the quiet tears that followed, Prince William, ever attuned to the energy of the room, decided it was time to lift the spirits of the children. He clapped his hands gently and said with a warm smile, "Now, I think we've all earned a bit of fun, don't you?" The children responded with nods and a few hesitant giggles, and the carers quickly sprang into action, guiding everyone back to the colorful playroom. The walls were lined with shelves of art supplies, toys, and games, while tables had already been set up with paints, colored paper, and brushes, as if the staff knew this moment would come. William sat down at one of the tables, rolling up his sleeves and picking up a paintbrush. "All right," he announced, glancing at the group. "Who here is going to help me make the best picture in the room?" That broke the tension completely. A few children eagerly joined him, pulling out paper and dipping brushes into bright colors. One girl painted a crown for him and held it up proudly, making William laugh. "That's far better than the real thing," he said, pretending to set it on his head to a chorus of giggles. After the crafts, he suggested they all step outside for some fresh air and a quick game. The staff ushered everyone into the sunny courtyard where a small football lay waiting on the grass. William grinned mischievously. "I warn you, I'm quite good at this," he teased. What followed was a delightfully chaotic match. Children ran in all directions, kicking and laughing, while William joined in wholeheartedly, pretending to trip and let them steal the ball from him. His playful competitiveness had everyone laughing loudly. Even the carers found themselves cheering from the sidelines. Once everyone was breathless from running, they returned inside to cool down, where William settled into a cozy corner and picked up a storybook. The children gathered around him on cushions, leaning against each other as he read aloud, his voice animated and warm. The laughter and light chatter filled the room again, proving just how resilient the children were and how vital joy was, even in the shadow of grief. William's presence not only comforted them, but reminded everyone that happiness could still bloom amidst pain. Media and public reaction. By the time Prince William left the center that afternoon, the air outside was still buzzing with emotion. Journalists and photographers who had waited patiently outside during the visit now scrambled to capture the prince, waving goodbye to the children, many of whom stood at the door smiling and clutching little art projects they'd made earlier. Within hours, snippets of the visit began surfacing online. One video clip, barely 30 seconds long, showed the exact moment the little girl asked her heartbreaking question, "Do you miss your mummy like I miss mine?" And William's tender response. The clip quickly spread across social media platforms, racking up millions of views and thousands of comments within the first day. Headlines blazed across news websites. Prince William breaks down after child's heartbreaking question. Future king shows his humanity in tearful exchange. A moment that touched the world, Prince William and a grieving child. On Twitter, the hashtag #William and her trended globally. People shared their own stories of loss and healing, tagging the prince and expressing gratitude for his openness and compassion. One user wrote, "Watching Prince William console that little girl reminded me I'm not alone. Grief doesn't care if you're royal or not." Another added, "We need more moments like this. Leaders who show they're human too." Parents who had experienced similar tragedies wrote heartfelt posts about how the video had moved them to tears. One mother shared a photo of her late son alongside a screenshot of William holding the little girl's hand, caption, "This reminded me so much of my own son. Thank you, William, for showing her, and all of us, that it's okay to cry." Even major mental health and bereavement charities weighed in, applauding the prince for using his platform to shed light on childhood grief. One organization released a statement saying, "Prince William's vulnerability and empathy during his visit have sparked a much-needed conversation about grief. His words today will help countless children feel seen and heard." The little girl's family later gave a short interview to a local newspaper. Her mother, visibly emotional but smiling through tears, said, "What he said to her will stay with her forever. She hasn't stopped talking about him. He made her feel like she mattered, and that her mummy wasn't forgotten. That means the world to us." Other parents at the center echoed her sentiments. One father remarked, "We've had visitors before."
Believe me, it wasn't my first time, and I know there's been speculation about that. I had to practice, I really did. I was terrified that I was going to do some...
But none of them connected like he did. You could tell he really felt it. He really cared. Even days later, morning shows and talk radio programs were still discussing the moment. Commentators praised William not just for fulfilling his royal duty, but for being deeply human in a way that resonated with millions.
This issue of mental health is really brimming under the surface of public consciousness.
His visit didn't just comfort one little girl. It inspired an entire conversation about grief, empathy, and the healing power of kindness. But how did Prince William choose to end a day that had touched so many hearts? Keep watching to hear the promise he made. A promise to return. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, Prince William gathered once more with the children and staff in the main hall. The atmosphere now felt lighter. Laughter had replaced tears, and the earlier heaviness had given way to a quiet warmth. William stood in front of the group, his hands clasped, a soft smile on his face. "I want to thank every single one of you," he began, his voice full of sincerity. "Not just for letting me be part of your day, but for reminding me how strong and inspiring young people can be, even in the face of such sadness." The children looked up at him, many holding onto their colorful crafts or clutching the football from earlier, their cheeks still pink from the day's activities. The little girl who had asked the heartbreaking question now stood at the front of the group, her ribbon slightly askew but her eyes brighter than before. Then, to the surprise of many, William continued, "This won't be my last visit here. I promise to keep supporting everything this center stands for. You've shown me today how much this place matters, and I'll do everything I can to help it grow." Polite applause turned quickly into genuine cheers from the children. Before leaving, William handed an envelope to the center's director, a personal donation to fund more educational programs and expand the therapeutic spaces. The director's eyes welled with tears as she thanked him. Finally, it was time to say goodbye. The children gathered at the door, waving enthusiastically as he stepped outside. The little girl managed her first smile of the day, her small hand raised high as he turned back to meet her gaze. One last time. William paused on the steps, glancing back thoughtfully at the smiling faces in the doorway, before walking toward his car. The moment was quiet but powerful, a promise made, and a connection that would not be forgotten. One little girl's question reminded us all that even kings in waiting grieve. But what do you think her words truly meant? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.